James Egan Holmes, case number 12 CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys and the prosecutors are present as well. Are you folks ready for the jury, Mr. Brockler?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
King?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's bring the jury in, please.
What time stops we get our lunch schedule for today?
Let's try to stop around noon and take a break between 12 and 1. Do you think we'll be finished playing this exhibit by then?
Just shy of it, Your Honor. Sounds like we have an hour and 51 minutes left, so we'll have a little bit left there.
All right, so maybe you can do your questioning at that point of Dr. Reed. Oh, I guess we'll have that short, not over. Yeah, that's fine. We'll stop. If it's that close, let's go through to the end, and then we'll take a break at that point. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Your Honor, that would take us to about, I guess, 12:30 or so.
Oh, is it 12:30? Then in that case, if it's that long, let's stop at 12. Thank you. This is why I did not major in math. But I'm not blaming my public education for that. Please be seated, everyone. Welcome back, members of the jury. Just a note about scheduling. As you know, today we're going to take 1 hour for lunch, so it's going to be a shortened lunch break. I'm anticipating that the exhibit... Oh, I didn't like the sound of that. Is everybody okay? All right. Don't break anything. We're going to take a shortened lunch break between 12 and 1. So we're going to allow the prosecution to continue publishing Exhibit P-TR-1009 until about 12, and then we'll take a break between 12 and 1. And then I think there will be probably approximately a half hour or so left on that exhibit after lunch, and the prosecution will then have an opportunity to publish that last half hour or so after the lunch break. Before we continue, I want to remind you again that the defendant's statements on this video recording have been admitted only for a limited purpose. You may consider the defendant's statements on this video recording only as to the issues that are raised by his plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider them for any other purpose. Dr. Reed's statements on this video recording may only be considered for the limited purpose of allowing you to evaluate the reliability of his examination and to provide context to the statements made in the video recording by the defendant. You shall not consider any statements or questions by Dr. Reed on this video recording for any other purpose. With those instructions in mind, Mr. Brockler, you may proceed with publishing People's Exhibit P-TR-1009.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I will dim the lights.
Described him as in some ways being a mentor, maybe not an official mentor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess he mentored me during the rotation.
Tell me more about that relationship, would you?
He just showed me where the chemicals were, where the kits were, where the machines were, that kind of thing.
Did y'all ever do anything outside the lab, outside the school?
No, not really.
Go have a beer, or get lunch or coffee?
No.
Another person I don't think I asked you about was Professor Delacqua.
Yeah, he was the professor of that second rotation.
Tell me about Professor Delacqua.
He recites a lot of esoteric knowledge.
You're smiling as you say he recites a lot of esoteric knowledge.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not quite that way.
Well, some of it's not relevant to what I needed to do.
Tell me more.
I don't know, he just goes on and on, so he talks for a long time.
Good teacher, mediocre teacher, bad teacher?
He wasn't really teaching me anything. So most of that I did from John.
Okay. What was he supposed to be teaching?
I don't think he was supposed to be teaching. He didn't have a teaching job.
Delacqua?
Yeah.
From the texts and things, he wasn't the most liked professor at the place. Does that ring a bell?
Who said that?
I'm trying to think, but the interchanges, little sarcasms about Martin Delacqua.
I could see that as valid.
In what way?
He's kind of standoffish, I guess.
Toward the end of the year, you needed to take your prelims.
Right.
Can you tell me a little about, academic-wise, what was leading up to the prelims? What was school like leading up to that?
Well, all the core courses were finished by then. And it was the third rotation was going on.
Are there 3 rotations per year?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like a quarter system?
I think it's a quarter system.
Okay. So what were you doing, say, what was roughly the date of the prelims?
Oh, it was mid-June something.
So what would you have been doing in May with regard to prelims?
In May? I guess studying or something. I didn't study for the prelims though.
Did the other students or your
Probably.
peers, as of May, would they have been worrying about the prelims or studying for the prelims?
I would say so.
Was that different from the way you were looking at the prelims?
Well, they didn't give much direction on what the prelims were going to be on, so I didn't know what to study for.
You didn't know what to study. But the other people were studying something. Am I right?
I can't actually confirm that. I just assumed that.
What, you assume that? Okay. Tell me more about not studying or not studying as much.
Well, I guess that was unusual for me because I usually study for tests.
6 months before that, would you have been studying a lot for whatever was coming up?
No, I probably would have been working some neuroscience courses and core courses at that time.
Did that require a lot of study?
Not that much.
In a given day or week, can you give me an idea of how much time you spent working on classwork, homework, for want of a better term, studying one way or another, reading?
Well, there'd usually be a test on Friday and then turning in a take-home test on Monday.
And how much preparation time and reading time and study time would those things take outside of class for you?
Maybe 5 hours
Per day, per week?
per week.
So are you saying that in a given week in grad school, which is pretty tough, you were working roughly an hour a day or less on average on your studies? Is that about right, or am I missing something?
Usually it wouldn't be spread throughout. It would usually be on a day I wanted to complete the test.
Okay. Help me out a little bit. I'm trying to get an idea of how much time you spent outside of class. Let's say in a given week, you implied 5 hours based on the weekly exam and the weekly paper. Is that about it for a week for you?
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. What do you think other students, your peers, were doing in terms of that? Were they spending, as far as you know, roughly the same amount of time?
I assume they would spend the same amount.
About the same amount of time? Okay. That leaves a lot of free time for a grad student. I didn't know grad students had that much free
Well,
time.
then there's all the rotation. You have to do you're in lab then for your day, basically, for 5 days a week.
Roughly how much of the day, how many hours a day would you be?
9 to 5.
Okay. As prelims came closer, let's just say May, about how much time were you spending reading or studying?
I can't remember if the third rotation is still going on in May or not. But I had to do a PowerPoint for one of my classes. I spent like 5 hours for that too, I guess, each week. The rest was like playing video games and watching TV.
You're a smart guy. Could you play video games, watch TV, and still do okay in classes?
Yeah.
Okay. With regard to preparing for prelims,
It was almost none.
and in my mind, I've not taken the kind of prelims you're talking about. In my mind, most people prepare quite a bit for them. Is that accurate, that you would be unusual in that you didn't prepare much, or would that not be unusual?
That would be unusual.
It's unusual. Tell me about the not preparing then.
Well, I felt that since there wasn't any direction given to what should be studied for, I shouldn't study at all.
Was there anybody you could have asked about it?
I did ask. I asked my advisor, and he just said study everything, which wasn't too helpful.
A little too broad a task. Any other reasons that you didn't study for the prelims? We're talking now roughly May.
Well, I was focused on my mission.
Okay. Was the mission filling up the time and pushing other important things out of the way, or was it just that you didn't know what to study or feel like studying for prelims?
It was a bit of both.
What portion of both?
Probably 25, 75, or 75 is not knowing what to study.
So give or take 25% is the mission is pushing other things aside.
Right.
And give or take 75% is, I don't know what to study anyway, so I might as well not study.
Right.
Is that right? And again, as I said before, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Sometimes I talk too much. Okay.
No, that's accurate.
Did that change one way or the other as we move into June and the prelims get closer?
I didn't really care if I passed or failed the prelims at that time.
So, I'm sorry, the last?
At that time.
At that time. So did your behavior change or stay the same?
My behavior, what do you mean?
In terms of not studying, you continued to not study?
Right.
For him? Did the reason for not studying continue to be about 75%, I don't know what to study anyway, and 25%, the mission is filling my time, or did that proportion change as
I
prelims?
think it flipped to 75% mission.
Okay. When the prelims themselves came around, tell me, how long are the prelims? Is it 1 day, half a day?
No, it's not that long. I think it was only an hour.
Really?
It was an oral examination, so I never taken an oral examination before.
So there's no written portion, it was all oral.
Right, you could use the whiteboard and draw stuff.
Do you remember the day that you took them? I don't want the date, but can you picture the day that you took them in your mind?
Yeah.
Walk me through that day, would you?
Well, I got up and went to the neuroscience conference room, which is where it was at. And there were 3 professors, each tested me on a separate subject. One was like cell biology, the next was like systems neuroscience, and then the third I don't remember what classification it was.
Who was in the room for your exam?
Those 3 other professors.
So you're sitting there in front of a panel of professors, sort of. Is that accurate or no?
I'm standing in front of the whiteboard in front of them.
Tell me about how they ask you questions, what kind of questions?
Well, they asked me what happens to compound X when you stimulate a neuron and it's inhibited or something.
How did they question you? Was it civil? Was it abrasive? Rapid fire? How would you describe the way they questioned you?
Casual.
Casual. How did you feel as they were questioning you?
That I wasn't answering the problem correctly.
And how did you feel about not answering the problem correctly?
I didn't feel one way or the other.
Really? Didn't bother you?
No.
What do you make of that? It's your...
Well, that it didn't matter that if I passed or failed.
That's the second time you've said it didn't matter whether you passed or failed.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter because...
mission and get locked up, killed, and
So, if I understand you right, by that time, and by before that time, you anticipated not continuing anyway. You anticipated either being killed or locked up within a matter of weeks.
or a matter of a month or two.
Was the outcome really that firmly locked in as of, say, early June?
The outcome of failing the test?
The outcome of I'm going to die or I'm going to be in prison?
Yeah, those are the two options.
About when, if you remember, I know it's over 2 years ago, about when did that very restricted outcome, only two options, about when did that become crystal clear to you?
When I bought the shotgun, so that was before the preliminary exams.
So that's way back in March, am I remembering right? When
I don't
the shotgun?
remember the date. I don't know.
But it's months before.
Yeah, I think it's a month.
Okay. The shotgun was the first firearm you bought, or
The second.
the second firearm you bought? Okay. Okay. That being the case, do you remember why you even stayed in school?
I thought it would look conspicuous if I just dropped out without any warning or any justifiable cause.
It would look conspicuous. What's wrong with looking? I mean, people do drop out of grad school, I guess.
Right, so I dropped out with the reason of the preliminary exams failed.
Suppose you had just dropped out to continue the mission. What?
Then it would probably raise red flags to professors or to Fenton.
You had already seen Fenton at that time, hadn't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. When you finished the hour of the exam, well, let me go back. Did you try to answer the questions, or did you?
Yeah, I tried. Some of them I knew, but I just didn't write it down.
Really? Sometimes you'd know an answer and not bother to write it down.
Or say it. Or maybe the answer, but I didn't say it.
By the end of that hour, were you certain that you'd failed, or did you not know one way or the other?
I had a pretty good idea that I failed.
And once again, did that matter to you at all?
Well, it kind of facilitated the mission to keep moving.
I'm curious, was there any feeling of, or would there have been any feeling of wanting to pass just to show you can do it?
Yeah, I felt that way a little bit.
Were you disappointed that you didn't? You didn't show yourself that you could do it?
No, because I believed I could still do it if I'd taken the retake exam.
You decided not to take the retake.
Right.
Tell me about that decision.
Well, failing the prelim had made it an excuse to drop out of school. So it wouldn't make much sense to then go and retake the exam.
Except maybe to show yourself that you could pass.
Well, I believed I could pass anyway.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. As people asked you, I think there were a couple of texts maybe with Ben information to them, pretty much what you said was that you were just going to drop out. Am I remembering that right?
I don't remember ever texting them that I was going to drop out.
Okay.
I think by then I wasn't communicating with Ben and Cardi.
Okay. You texted with somebody. I'm trying to think who it might have been. Maybe Hillary? Who asked you about the prelims?
Yeah, I did a text.
Okay. Do you regret not passing the prelim? Just for personal
Just for like pride reasons.
pride reason? Yeah.
A little bit.
The process of sitting in there in that hour is a very unusual experience. And you've talked before about difficulty with situations analogous to that, and about the idea of freezing up.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about what was going on inside you as they were throwing questions at you?
Well, I kind of just went on autopilot.
You what?
Went on autopilot.
Did you have the freezing up experience?
A little bit, but then I would just jot something down
On the whiteboard.
on the whiteboard.
In the past, when you've frozen up, you mentioned that sometimes images come to mind. You remember those that you told me about a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
What were those images in the past? Can you refresh me?
Images of people getting sawed up or killed.
You remember the way in which they get killed? When you're frozen up and the image comes?
I don't think so. I think just that they die or something.
I remember you talking about the saws.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing was what you phrased, nuclear winter.
Right. That wasn't for individual people though.
That wasn't for individual people. Okay. Did you have any of those images during the question at the prelims?
No, because I was focused on answering the question.
Okay. Did you know ahead of time that it was going to be exactly an hour? Or did you not know how long it was going to be?
I don't remember.
Okay. Fair enough. I'd like to bring out the writings that you did in your cell. And once again, I may have already asked you this. Do you have any interest in continuing to write?
No, not really. I just read.
You wanted to get these ideas out, but some of them appear to be very complex ideas that could be developed or expanded or extended. Do you feel any wish to develop or expand or extend some of those ideas
Not anymore.
with the time? What do you make of that?
That I attributed an unusual amount of importance to them before I was medicated.
And you're implying that the medication has taken away or dulled or eliminated that impulse.
Yeah.
Okay. sets of pages refers to galactic colonization.
Right.
Okay. Do you remember kind of where you were when you were writing those things and thinking about those things?
Yeah, I was reading sci-fi at that time.
You were reading sci-fi at the time, okay. Tell me about your thoughts on galactic colonization.
Well, without galactic colonization, the human race would die out eventually, just because we run out of resources, or the sun would expand and consume the Earth.
Sooner or later, Earth is not going to be a good home,
Right.
or maybe not even an existing home. I read a little science fiction myself, so some of the things that you wrote down are pretty consistent with the various ideas that have come up. But were these ideas largely things that came out of you, or do you think they came out of some of the things that you read?
Both. Both.
Both, okay. The next one is a bit more philosophical. And again, we're talking about some point before you went to Denver Health.
Right.
Do you recall whether it's just before or a long time before, soon after you were arrested?
Well, I wrote it sequentially, so the farther back on the pages it is, the closer it will be.
What would be about the very earliest one, do you think?
That galactic colonization,
Okay.
if they're in order.
Roughly when would that have been, do you know?
I don't know.
Guess?
Maybe a month after.
After your arrest?
Yeah.
I'll put a question mark. 2 question marks. Did the officers at the jail know that you were doing the writing at that point? Or do you know?
I'd assume because they have cameras there.
Okay, so you weren't hiding it particularly?
I don't know how you would be able to hide it with
Yeah.
2 cameras.
The only reason I ask that is that at some point, I think close to the time that you went to Denver Health, they mentioned finding the notes, and I was wondering whether they knew they were there before, because after all, they roused you and they overturned your bunk and stuff like that on a pretty regular basis, right?
Right. Yeah. They wouldn't usually read it. They wouldn't pick up a notepad and
And I'm aware of, or I've been made aware, that it's okay for you to write stuff in your cell. Nobody minds if you do that.
Right.
The next thing, at least in the order that I have, the subtitle is Finite versus Infinity, Live and Die.
Okay.
Do you recall that general
A little
train of thought? Can you tell me about it?
Well, death is infinite and life is finite.
Okay. What else? What else came to mind then or comes to mind now?
Can I see the page?
Sure, you're welcome to.
Okay. So I was kind of speculating that before you live, there's called it before life is the same as after you live, which which is afterlife. So it ultimately didn't matter what you did in life, because it would just go back to before and after.
What's in the pre-life and the post-life? What's that like?
Dreamless sleep.
Okay. And I've heard you use that phrase before. I remember someone asking some philosopher, what happens after you die? What do you expect will happen after you die? And he said, no, they said, where will you go after you die? And he said, I guess the same place I spent the first 8 billion years.
Right.
So that sounds kind of similar.
Like that idea.
Yeah, it does. Toward the bottom of this page, kind of consistent with what you just said, you write, how can one attribute meaning to life when such ideals exist in non-existence? Any idea?
I'm not sure what that means.
Okay. Life is an eternal struggle to obtain these ideals.
Life's a struggle because it's imperfect.
You also say, and I'm aware that these may be kind of disjointed thoughts at this point, that the dreamless, imperturbable, I don't know whether that's imperturbable, the dreamless is the epitome of peace, justice, and freedom.
Right.
Do you recall that kind of thought?
It sounds accurate.
How might you expand on that? If you were teaching me about that thought, rather than the kind of bumper sticker of the sentence,
Right.
what would you teach me about that thought?
Well, in life there's conflict and struggles. There's not absolute freedom. You're bound by laws of nature and human laws. But when you're in a dreamless sleep, you're just kind of in a perfect state.
The word here may be imperceptible, so can one not perceive that perfect state when he's in it?
Right, there might not be a perception because you're not conscious or anything.
I can understand how that might be the epitome of peace, as you write here, but you also say it's the epitome of justice and freedom.
Well, nothing's holding you back for freedom. You're kind of like floating.
Kind of like what?
Floating.
Floating, okay. A little ways through, we come to some pages on the allception.
Yeah, I didn't really explain allception the first time
Okay.
in the notebook.
Can you help me with it now? And the way you were thinking about it in jail?
Well, I kind of figure it as the philosopher's stone, which is a solution to all problems, and that can be achieved through death. So it kind of relates back to the peaceful state of dreamless sleep a little bit.
Relates back to the peaceful state of dreamless sleep, is that what you said?
Yeah.
And a little later in the writing, you do use the phrase philosopher's stone.
Right.
Okay. The allception, and then you have your logo for the allception. All perspectives at once, and sometimes not, and every.
So like any perspective you can take, any not perspective you can take, it's going to encompass everything.
All thoughts at once, all and or times. All space at once and or times at once.
Right, so it's sort of this all-encompassing idea.
Okay. Space and times at once. Times at once. What comes to mind as you say that?
That it's like God a little bit. Because God is everything. And he's all spaces and times.
I believe you said last time we talked that the allception concept comes largely from within you and your thoughts, original to you.
Right, I haven't read it anymore.
Yeah, okay. Can you think of any particular readings that come close or that are analogous to the allception?
Maybe the Bible.
Okay. In what way?
In that they're defining and characterizing God a little bit.
I think, and I brought this up last time, what comes to my mind is quantum physics, cosmology. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, quantum physics deals with like the smallest possible particles and their relation to the rest of the universe.
One of the next pages is titled Awareness Basis. Is it okay? Yep. Okay. You talk about awareness arising from the nervous system. A neurochemical event creates awareness. Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Okay. Then one of the bullet points you have is that one can be alive and not aware. And you refer to the dreamless sleep.
Like if you're comatose or something.
Okay. Then a question. Can one be aware and not alive? Have you answered that question for
No,
yourself?
I haven't answered.
I guess that would be in the pre-life or the post-life setting.
Yeah, you'd have to be dead.
Are you curious about that?
Yeah.
Is it one of the questions that death might answer for you?
I would say so, yeah. It would be solved when you're dead.
For you, is it a reason to die?
No, the reason to die is like old age, natural causes, I would say.
But is finding out the answers to questions about death for you?
I kind of figure they'll come when they come anyway.
Okay. Sounds like you don't want to rush those. Or am I wrong?
There's no reason to hasten toward it.
What about for people that you kill?
No, that wasn't really a part of why I would kill them.
I think one of the things that you wrote or said at some point was that you had the idea that people wouldn't mind being killed or shouldn't mind being killed. Does that ring a bell?
That sounds accurate.
Tell me about that thought.
Well, they're going to be going to a peaceful state, and they'll avoid all the conflict and struggles of life.
They haven't yet decided that on their own, though, to go to that state.
Correct. It would be within my power.
And do you think that they, well, and actually I want to go back to June and July of 2012. At that time, so far as you remember, did you think that they wouldn't mind being killed? Or that they shouldn't mind being killed?
I never considered it.
Didn't consider whether they should mind or not?
Right.
Or whether they would mind or not?
Right. I was focused on increasing my own value and not their needs.
Is it fair to say that you were indifferent to their needs or wants or shoulds?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Because I take it no one in the theater that day went quietly to his or her death.
What do you mean?
That is, they maybe would or should want death in one way of your thinking about it. I understand you weren't considering that. But when the actual event took place, they did not go quietly. No.
Well, I didn't hear them say anything.
Do you think that, do you speculate that they simply didn't mind being shot?
I never considered it from their point of view.
What do you think now?
From their point of view, that they probably wouldn't want to be shot.
Okay. If I had asked you that somehow on July 19th of 2012, what would your answer have been?
Well, I never asked the question. So
Yeah. If I had asked you that question, the question is, would they mind being shot? What do you think you would have said on July 19th, 2012?
They probably will mind being shot.
If I had asked you the question, slightly different one, should they mind being shot, given your philosophy of life and death, what would your answer have been there?
No, because it doesn't matter what you do in life.
Because
It doesn't matter what you do in life, because you're just going to die anyway.
that doesn't quite jibe to me with what your mission was.
Right.
It mattered, your mission mattered a great deal to you.
Right. So the time I was alive, it did matter to me.
So
But in the end, it wouldn't matter.
at the time, what you were doing or going to do to them mattered to you, right?
Right.
What they might have thought about it didn't matter? Is that accurate?
What can you repeat it?
Sure. Your activities and your carrying out the killings did matter to you. It was a mission. It mattered.
Yeah.
You were spending lots of time and energy on that.
Right.
What they wanted, or whether they wanted to die or be injured, did that not matter mattered to you?
It didn't come up as, it's not that it didn't matter, it's that,
If I asked you that question then and said, Jimmy, does it matter to you that they don't want to die or they don't want to be injured?
well, I can only answer that what it means now in retrospective.
Can you speculate about what you think you might have answered then?
It probably would matter a great deal to them.
How about to you? Would what they want matter to you on July 19th?
Yes, because I'm empathetic.
Okay. Can you make those two concepts jibe? Because on the one hand, you carried it out with what you've described as an indifference to what they wanted. But you've just said that it matters, or that you believe, had I asked you then, you would have said, yes, it matters,
Right.
because you have empathy for them.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know if indifference was the right word.
Okay.
Maybe unknowledgeable about it.
I would say that again.
Maybe not knowing and being unknowledgeable
About,
of their conditions and their thoughts.
let's go with your word then. Unknowledgeable about, tell me again what you would be unknowledgeable about at the time.
Not asking the question of, does it matter to them if they live or die?
Okay. If I had asked you, I understand that you didn't ask yourself the question.
Right.
Okay. And you've kind of answered the question when I asked it, I think in two ways, and that's interesting to me. If I'd asked you the question, you believe now that you would have said, yes, I understand they don't want to die.
Right.
And you also said something akin to, that's not important to my mission. I need to carry out my mission. Is that fair to say or not?
Right, it's kind of irrelevant to my mission.
Okay, irrelevant is a better word than indifferent.
I don't know the word for not asking the question.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you think about not asking the question? Does that get us off the hook for, gee, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to eat the cake, even though it was, no, that's not a very good analogy. I see the birthday cake for John, and my name is Jimmy, but I'm not asking anybody whether the cake is for John, so I can go ahead and eat it. Is that...
I don't know if that compares or not.
Why do you suppose you didn't ask yourself? You sure thought about lots of things during the preparation for the mission. You were very complete in many ways.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
Assuming that it didn't occur to you to ask what the other people would have felt. What do you make of it not occurring to you?
It should have occurred.
Okay. That's looking back now.
Yeah.
It should have occurred. What about you in July of 2012 do you suppose led to it not occurring to you? You thought about the consequences for yourself.
Right, yeah.
You knew the consequences for others, but didn't think about it as relevant. You didn't ask yourself about it.
Right. I guess that made it easier or made me able to do it because maybe I wouldn't have been able to do it if I looked at it a little.
Okay. Okay. I think that's a thoughtful answer. Thank you. On this same awareness basis page, under can one be aware and not aware, you mention, quote, the notion of the soul immortal or spirit comes to mind. Soul immortal and spirit sounds a little different from dreamless sleep.
What's the question?
I'm sorry?
What's the question?
When you were writing this, apparently a couple of months after the shootings, you're thinking about, apparently, the notion of the soul immortal or spirit.
Right. I didn't know what that would be. What that is.
And it doesn't say that you have that notion. It just says the notion. So maybe maybe that's someone else's notion. But I guess I'm kind of wondering if that notion of a soul immortal or spirit fits somewhere in your view of the cosmos or view of things.
It could be something that exists forever.
That exists
forever.
Okay. Is that a good or bad thing? Indifferent? A definable thing?
I don't know what it means.
Does it have any value? Does it? You're referring on the next page, and I'm a little confused about it. Let me go to the transcript of it. You're talking a little bit about beliefs of reincarnation. In practice, however, this is yet to be possible, and the complexity of such a venture in immortalizing a matter arrangement that is amenable to changes on matter around it is daunting. That's a bit confusing to me. Does that ring a bell with you at all?
Well, I thought if the person was reincarnated, they'd have to be into a conscious state.
Okay. And in the next sentence, indeed, you refer to the duplication of one's awareness. And the last bullet is an interesting statement. The permanent loss of awareness and unity with the allception is the philosopher's stone.
Death is the philosopher's stone, basically.
It sounds like that's kind of the ultimate place to go.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have the logo, the allception logo right up to that. Read much about Buddhism?
No, not really.
Does any of this remind you of
Kind of sounds like Zen.
Zen-like philosophies?
A little bit.
Do you think any of it arises out of some past familiarity with Zen.
Yeah, it could be unconscious.
The next page refers to unconceivable, conceivable, and the paradox.
Okay.
And the bullet that I kind of, or the stuff that I sort of had highlighted, was that in general, I think you say, men are not philosophers, but philosophers. Remember coining that term?
Yeah.
Tell me about philosophers.
I don't remember what it was.
Sounds to me from reading this that you were talking about people who tried to be philosophers but got it wrong, or were thinking badly, and thus were philosophers. But that may not be exactly what you meant.
I don't remember what it was.
Okay. My thought, not yours.
Okay.
Then you refer again to the philosopher's stone as the solution to all problems and all questions. Wise apes have thrown the stone unwittingly. For eons, when problems arose that appeared so difficult as to be unsolvable. I take it wise apes refers to humans? Or no?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you mean, or what do you think you meant at the time? Wise apes have thrown the stone, the philosopher's stone, unwittingly for eons.
It kind of suggests that violence is the last resort when all other problems can't solve it. So it's kind of considering the philosopher's stone as violence.
Oh. Okay. You mean seeing the stone as a literal stone instead of a figurative stone?
Well, both.
Something to throw, or they become violent. So it can give you a literal image or a figurative image. Interesting. Can you say any more about that?
Just that the ultimate violence is death. We resort to killing when we can't solve a problem any other way.
Sounds like that applies to politics and wars.
Right, yeah.
Does it apply to you?
Yeah.
Tell me how it applies to you.
Well, we couldn't solve the problem of getting out of my depression. So I thought I would kind of make myself more valuable by killing people.
And I think we talked about that being more valuable, correct me if I'm misremembering, didn't mean you would live longer
No.
or that you would have more lives. Tell me again, in what way you're more valuable?
Well, it's kind of like the value of $1. Like, $1 isn't worth anything, but you attribute value to it. So if you attribute value to killing people, then you become more valuable when you kill a person.
And who does the attributing of the value?
The killer.
So who attributes the value to Jimmy Holmes?
I do.
Is there anyone else or any other entity that recognizes the value that you now
Not
have?
that I've heard of.
Do you think there might be?
It's possible.
Can you think about that a minute? We talked about you attributing the value yourself.
Right.
And it sounds like it's worth thinking about whether someone or something else also sees you as more valuable.
I don't know who would do that, but
Think about it for a minute.
maybe the justice system, because it creates an imbalance in value. The justice system wants to obliterate that and get it back to zero.
Obliterated by,
Killing me.
and I think you did say last time we talked that once you die, everything goes to zero.
It either goes to zero, or if they're believers in the value system, then it could go towards their value.
And you did say that someone who executes you gets your value, which, by the way, at that point is 1, not 13. Do I remember
I'm
that?
not sure. It could be either. I'm not sure how to attribute it.
You're the arbiter of all this, though. No one else is making the rules. You're making the rules, right?
Right.
So you can make the rule however you want.
I can make it 1 or 13.
How do you want to make it?
1.
Is there anything that would countervene your decision to make it 1?
Yes, if someone else believed that I was worth 13, then they would be the arbiter of that.
Okay. So if someone who killed you
Right.
believed that you were worth 13, they get to decide once they've killed you whether it's 1 or 13.
Right.
How about before they kill you?
They could still make that decision if they believe it. So
How many folks do you think believe in the system?
I haven't told anybody about the system except in the notebook and here.
Okay. Do you think anybody else has created the system or figured out the system independent of you?
Well, there's 7 billion people, so maybe.
One of the things I'm asking is it a system that's there for them to discover? Or is it a system that you invented and thus it's not there for them to discover, it resides only in you?
Oh, well, I invented the arbitrary value. You could say a person's worth 100 and not 1. So I invented the arbitrariness of it, but they could come up with the same system, the same value system.
So Mary could invent it independently of your inventing it.
Right,
Like Edison and Tesla invented things independently.
right. But it might not be exactly the same.
How valid would Mary's system be since it's not yours?
Well, people can believe whatever they want, so it's as valid as she believes it to be.
Does her believing it make it real?
Yeah, because beliefs are real.
Does her believing it make it real any place outside of her body?
As in other people, but if she shared it and other people agreed, then it would be.
If they agree. Does it exist anywhere other than idiosyncratic to Mary?
I'm not sure what you're trying to.
Let me bring it back to you, if I may. You have the belief.
Right.
The belief has been consistent and continued. Right.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I don't share the belief.
Right, so it's like you have a almost different religion or something.
If you believe that the file cabinet over there is gray, then it either is or isn't gray. And what I believe is irrelevant to whether it's gray or not. Let's say you're correct, it's gray, or that it's a file cabinet. If I want to call it a pencil, doesn't matter. That exists independent of you, and
Right.
you don't just believe it, you're aware of it.
It doesn't take a herd mentality to make something.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't take a herd mentality.
It doesn't take any mentality, it's standing over there.
Right.
Your belief in the value system.
Right.
How close does it come to being there, whether I believe it or not?
So is it objective rather than subjective?
That's pretty close, sure.
I believe it to be objective, but then that's my subjective opinion. So
You believe it to be objective, okay. I'm kind of pinning this down as best I can. If you weren't here,
right.
if, for example, you were deceased,
Yeah.
would the value system still be there?
Yeah.
But you're not there to describe it.
I've written it down, so it exists.
I'm sorry?
I've written it down
Okay.
and shared it with other people, so it exists through them.
Okay. Fair enough. On another page, you talk about freedom. And one of the bullet points is moral law. To take away freedom, to give more freedom. Does that ring a bell right now?
I think I applied it to myself, so they took away my freedom to give other people more freedom.
Okay. Then you have a little section on morality. That one. Morality, and under morality you have two groups, those who are wronged, those who are wrongers.
Right.
Okay. And then you have underneath that, it sounds like two sets of situations. One in which you compensate the wronged and reform the wrongers.
Right.
Another in which you compensate the wronged and punish the wrongers.
Right.
Okay. Can you tell me just about that portion of it? I'll ask about the rest of it in a minute, but the wronged and the wrongers, compensating the wronged, and either reforming or punishing the wrongers. Talk to me about that bit of philosophy.
Well, in morality, you have to find balance. And if a person's wrong, they have to be compensated for whatever they were wrong with. And you want to make the person who wronged them better or not. And then the other option is, instead of making the wronger reformed, you punish him to create that balance.
To create the balance of balancing out the wronged and a sense?
If you
Maybe
take
that's-
it that global, I guess.
Okay. Is reforming and punishment a dichotomous situation, or can it be blended or apportioned?
You can do both. Yeah.
Morality is a huge subject for lots and lots of philosophies. Anything else to this part of morality, what you mean here with regard to morality?
I don't think so.
What would be a wrong in morality for you?
Breaking a law.
Let's go back to May, June, July of 2012. What would you have thought would be a wrong, doesn't have to be personal to you, a wrong and a wronger back then?
I don't know at that time what I would attribute wrong and wrong to.
Do you think you'd think any differently about it than you do now, or not?
No, I think now that the person who wrongs is the wronger and the person who's wronged is.
2.5 years ago, were there people who are wronged and people who are wrongers in general?
No, I don't think it defines a person.
Okay. How then have you changed in that regard, if you have?
Well, I think I'm being treated like a wronger. It's because I'm being punished with having no freedoms outside of jail.
You said punished like a wronger. In that regard, are you a wronger or no?
I would say no.
And you're not a wronger because, can you explain that to me?
I don't know how to explain that.
Lots and lots of people would say you committed a wrong.
Right. Well, I should say right.
I understand. I believe you're saying that you didn't commit a wrong.
Now I believe I did.
You said that you shouldn't be punished as a wronger or something like that.
The best option is reform.
Okay. I want to stick with the punish for right now.
Okay.
You're being punished like a wronger. I think those were your words. And the implication is that you're not a wronger, but you're being punished. And when I said, are you a wronger? You said, no.
All right.
Do you see the disconnect between your statement and what so many other people say about you being a wronger?
That's what they believe.
And in what way can you convince me, I guess, with an argument that you are not a wronger?
Well, it's what I believe. It's moral relativism.
I understand a little about moral relativism. I'm asking, other than the tautology of it's true because I say it's true, do you have any other way of convincing me or moving me in the direction of believing that you're not a wronger?
rest of my life I was okay.
Okay. One event out of many. One day out of many thousands of days
Right.
that you've lived. Okay. Anything else contribute to your argument to me that you're not a wronger?
No.
Okay. Would the same principle apply to somebody who robbed a bank one time?
Yeah.
Would that person deserve a punishment? Let me go back. So that person, on balance, would not be a wronger if the rest of his life was law-abiding?
Yeah.
I can understand the concept. It sounds like in pursuing that concept, one sort of has to say the punishment system is wrong itself, unless somebody really has been wrong most of the time in their life. A wronger consistently, lots and lots. Am I close there or no?
Well, it's better to have a correcting system than a punishment system. But we currently don't really have a way to correct brain diseases.
And that's a philosophical statement. Let me now bring it to you. You're not a wronger because you say you're not a wronger, because that's your philosophy
Or belief.
or belief, and because you had many, many more good days than bad ones.
Right.
Only one bad one. Okay. Does the wrong have anything to do with how much of a wrong it was? For example,
A lot of people versus everyone.
exactly, that was exactly my thought. 12 deaths, 50 some odd injuries. Some
The
number.
magnitude matters.
The magnitude matters. Given that magnitude and the number of other lives affected, not just the folks in the theater, would you still hold to the idea that you're not a wronger?
I would say that was selfish, but not morally wrong.
Let me turn the table slightly, because this is intriguing to me. If someone had, in an effort to kill you, cut off your leg
Okay.
so that you're not dead in a peaceful, dreamless sleep, you're alive with no leg and it hurts, has that person wronged you?
Yes. Because I'm not whole anymore.
Is that person a wronger?
No, not necessarily.
I'm going to turn the lights now. Members of the jury, I'm going to give you the instruction again, since we have paused the playing of Exhibit P-TR-1009. Please remember that the defendant's statements on this video recording have been admitted only for a limited purpose. You may consider the defendant's statements on this video recording only as to the issues raised by his plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider them for any other purpose. Dr. Reed's statements on this video recording may only be considered for the limited purpose of allowing you to evaluate the reliability of his examination and to provide context to the statements made in the video recording by the defendant. You shall not consider any statements made by Dr. Reed on this video recording for any other purpose. It's about 12:05, so let's go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. Please remember that the advisements I have been giving you with respect to your conduct when you're not in the courtroom apply during the break. Enjoy the lunch. Thank you for agreeing to do a shortened lunch. I'll see you back here at 1:05. Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. Is there anything we need to talk about at this time, Mr. Brockler?
Your Honor, we have, while this has been playing, and I think the court would note that the background white noise is pretty tough. We went and played it again while we were in court, just using regular old desktop speakers, and it sounds almost flawless in terms of reducing down that sound. It sounds like, and this is, I think, how it's played on our laptops, it feels like it's a speaker issue here, and I guess what I want to ask the court is if it would entertain the idea, if we came back early, of somehow using just regular cheapy desktop speakers and not use the court's internal system so that the jury could, bless you, hear it better.
I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. Anything else? Anything from you, Mr. King?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. The court will be in recess.